Junior Enforcement Officer Thela adjusted her breathing apparatus one final time as her small enforcement vessel settled onto the dusty surface of Helios 9, an abandoned mining moon orbiting a gas giant in the outer reaches of Federation space. Her violet skin shimmered with anxious perspiration beneath her regulation armor, antennae twitching involuntarily, a telltale sign of nervousness that her academy instructors had always criticized. "Compose yourself, officer," she whispered, mimicking Commander Vexus's stern tone. "This is what you trained for." The mission brief had been clear: apprehend the human known as Nathaniel Blackwood, wanted for 13 violations of the Galactic Federation's non-interference protocols. According to her files, humans were notoriously unpredictable, violent one moment, charming the next. The Academy had dedicated entire semesters to studying Earth's bloody history, with special attention to humans' unique ability to manipulate other species through what her professors called emotional contagion. Thela checked her plasma restraints and stun baton before opening the airlock. The moon's thin atmosphere was breathable but unpleasant, a mix of dust and lingering industrial chemicals from its mining days. Scanning for human biosignatures, she instructed her wrist computer. The device chirped softly, projecting a holographic map with a pulsing red dot approximately half a kilometer east of her position. Multiple non-human biosignatures detected in proximity to target, the computer added, surprising her. The brief hadn't mentioned accomplices. Thela made her way across the barren landscape, passing abandoned equipment and collapsed mining shafts. As she approached a cluster of repurposed habitat domes connected by transparent tunnels, she slowed her pace. The structures had been modified extensively, with hydroponics gardens growing in one dome and what appeared to be a playground visible in another. A playground? That wasn't consistent with any human outlaw base she'd studied. Movement caught her eye, a small, six-limbed figure scampering between domes. A child. A Centaurian child, if she wasn't mistaken. Then another emerged, this one with the distinctive shell patterns of a juvenile Crexian. "Computer, verify information," Thela whispered. There was no mention of children in the brief. Information regarding additional occupants was classified. The computer responded blandly. Thela frowned. Classified information on a routine apprehension mission seemed irregular. She continued her approach, using rocky outcroppings for cover. When she reached the main habitat dome, she positioned herself beside the airlock, weapon ready. Through the transparent material, she could see the interior. Comfortable if modest living quarters, with handcrafted furniture and walls adorned with children's artwork. And there he was, the human. Nathaniel Blackwood stood with his back to her, preparing something at a cooking station. He was taller than she'd expected, with broad shoulders and dark hair tied back loosely. He wore simple workman's clothes, patched in several places. Thela steeled herself and slipped through the airlock, raising her weapon. "By galactic law, you are under arrest. Don't move." The human turned slowly, hands raised slightly. His eyes, a startling blue against sun-darkened skin, widened briefly before settling into a resigned expression. No terror, no rage, just quiet acceptance. "I've been expecting someone like you," he said, his voice unexpectedly gentle. "Though I thought they'd send a full tactical unit, not a single officer." "On your knees," Thela commanded, ignoring how her voice wavered. "Hands behind your head." Instead of complying, Nathaniel gestured towards something behind her. "I'm happy to surrender, officer, but perhaps we could avoid frightening the children." Thela risked a quick glance over her shoulder. 5 alien children of various species stood frozen in the doorway, expressions ranging from fear to curiosity. "Nate? Is something wrong?" asked a small Arcturian girl, her luminescent eyes wide. "Everything's fine, Mila," Nathaniel replied calmly. "This officer and I just need to talk. Why don't you all go with Pax to the garden dome and harvest some vegetables for dinner?" An older reptilian child, presumably Pax, nodded solemnly and ushered the others away, casting one last protective glance at the human. When they had gone, Nathaniel lowered his hand slightly. "Now, officer." "Thela." Junior Enforcement Officer Thela of the Zeridian Sector. "Officer Thela, I assume you've come about my whistleblowing activities?" Thela's antennae twitched in confusion. "You are charged with 13 violations of non-interference protocols on developing worlds." A flicker of something, anger, frustration, crossed his face before disappearing. "That's what they're calling it now? Interesting." He stepped forward, and Thela raised her weapon higher. "I said don't move. If you're going to arrest me, You'll need to know what you're actually dealing with, he said, still unnervingly calm. Those children? They're not my accomplices. They're refugees, orphans created by the very protocols I supposedly violated. For the first time since landing, Fila felt a trickle of doubt. This wasn't following the script she had practiced. The human didn't match her briefing materials, no violence, no resistance, and certainly no alien children under his care. Your manipulation tactics won't work on me, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Nathaniel smiled sadly. I'm not trying to manipulate you, Officer Thela. But before you take me away, I'd like to request one thing: confirm your charges. Read them completely, including the specific worlds and dates. Thela hesitated, her training battling with growing uncertainty. The dome suddenly felt too warm, the human's gaze too perceptive. She had the unsettling feeling that she was missing something crucial. Please, he added softly. If I'm to be arrested, I deserve to know exactly why. Against her better judgment, Thela found herself reaching for her datapad to retrieve the full indictment. Something about this mission felt wrong. The classified information, the unexpected children, and most disturbing of all, the calm, kind-eyed human who looked nothing like the monster she had been trained to expect. As she began to read the charges aloud, Thela couldn't shake the feeling that her first solo mission was about to become far more complicated than she had ever anticipated. Part 2. The Accusation. Violation number 1, Thela read, her voice echoing in the quiet dome. Unauthorized contact with the pre-spaceflight civilization of Proxima Centauri 4 on galactic date 3297. 42. Nathaniel leaned against the counter, arms now folded across his chest. And what exactly did this unauthorized contact entail, according to your charges? Thela scanned the document, antennae twitching. Distribution of advanced medical technology, resulting in disruption of natural development paths. Interesting, Nathaniel said softly. And what was happening on Proxima Centauri 4 on that date? That information isn't relevant to the... It was a pandemic, he interrupted. A virus that was wiping out entire communities. The Federation had the cure but classified the Proximans as pre-integration species, meaning they were left to die while Federation mining corporations prepared to claim their resources once the population was sufficiently decimated. Thela's grip tightened on her weapon. These are serious allegations. They're not allegations. They're facts. Nathaniel gestured to a storage unit in the corner. The evidence is all there, including Federation Executive Order 7729, which explicitly stated that Proximan extinction would be economically advantageous. Before Thela could respond, a small chime sounded from her wrist communicator. Incoming transmission from Federation Command, her device announced. Officer Thela, a stern voice crackled through the speaker. Status report. Commander Vexus, she responded, straightening instinctively. I have located the target and am preparing to make the arrest. Excellent. Be advised that a suppression unit has been dispatched to your location to assist with cleanup. Nathaniel's expression darkened. They're not coming for me, he said quietly once the transmission ended. They're coming for the children. Witnesses need to be eliminated. That's absurd, Thela retorted, but uncertainty crept into her voice. The Federation doesn't harm children. Tell that to Mila, Nathaniel replied. Her entire family was executed for protesting Federation mining operations on her homeworld. Or Pax, who was the sole survivor when Federation peacekeepers used experimental weapons on his village. A soft sound at the doorway drew their attention. The Arcturian child, Mila, stood there, clutching a basket of vegetables. Her luminescent eyes fixed on Thela's weapon. Are you taking Nate away? She asked in a small voice. Thela lowered her weapon slightly, discomfited by the child's fear. I'm just doing my job. That's what the other soldiers said before they hurt my parents. Mila's voice was matter-of-fact, devoid of childish emotion, which somehow made it worse. Nathaniel crossed the room and knelt beside the girl. It's okay, Mila. Officer Thela is just confused. She doesn't know what her people have done. I'm not confused, Thela insisted, but her conviction was wavering. And they're your people too. The Federation represents all sentient beings. Does it? Nathaniel stood, gently taking the basket from Mila and sending her back to join the others. When she was gone, he turned back to Thela. Let me show you something. He moved slowly toward a storage compartment, mindful of Thela's weapon tracking his movements. From inside, he withdrew an old-fashioned data crystal and held it out to her. What is this? She asked, not taking it. My credentials. Before I became a dangerous criminal, I was cultural attaché Nathaniel Blackwood, Federation Diplomatic Corps. I spent 15 years building relationships with developing worlds, helping them meet Federation integration standards. His expression hardened. Until I realized those standards were designed to be impossible to meet without surrendering all resources and sovereignty. Thela reluctantly accepted the crystal, inserting it into her datapad. Nathaniel's personnel file appeared, an impressive record of diplomatic service, commendations, rapid promotions, followed by a final entry. Terminated for psychological instability and xenophilic tendencies. She looked up, meeting his gaze. This doesn't disprove the charges. No, but it might explain why you should question them. Nathaniel moved closer, and Thela was surprised to find she didn't step back. You've been trained to see humans as manipulative, as dangerous. What if that's propaganda designed to discredit anyone who speaks against Federation policies? He was close enough now that she could detect his scent, earthy and warm, unlike the sterile recycled air of Federation stations. Something about his presence was disarming, yet not in the predatory way her training had described. There was a genuineness to him that conflicted with everything she'd been taught. Why should I believe you? She asked, her voice softer than intended. You shouldn't, not without proof. His eyes held hers. But you should question why a dangerous criminal would hide on an obscure moon caring for orphaned children rather than building weapons or raising an army. Thela's antennae twitched again, a response she couldn't control. Among Zeridians, it signaled recognition of truth. Nathaniel noticed, his expression softening. Your species can't help but respond to honesty, can they? That's why there are so few Zeridians in high Federation positions. You'd give away all the lies. A sudden proximity alert blared from her ship. Thela checked her wrist display. A Federation cruiser has entered orbit. The suppression unit, Nathaniel said grimly. We have maybe 20 minutes before they land. We. Thela challenged. Yes, Officer Thela. We. His gaze was intense now. Because you have a decision to make. You can hand me over and pretend you never saw those children, never saw my service record, never questioned your orders. Or you can listen to what your antennae are telling you and help me protect these innocent lives. Thela's training screamed at her to complete her mission, but doubt had taken root. She studied Nathaniel's face, the lines around his eyes spoke of hardship, but there was no malice there, no cunning manipulation. The other charges, she said finally. Show me the evidence for the other violations. A small smile touched Nathaniel's lips. Follow me. As they moved deeper into the habitat, Thela felt the familiar structure of her world beginning to crack. With each step beside this enigmatic human, each document he showed her, each inconsistency in her orders revealed, she was moving further from the certainties of her training. And strangest of all, beneath her growing dismay at what appeared to be Federation deception, she felt an unexpected flutter whenever Nathaniel's hand brushed hers as he passed her documents, whenever his eyes met hers with that quiet intensity. It was unprofessional, inappropriate, and yet undeniable. The Federation cruiser would land soon, and with it would come a moment of truth. As Nathaniel led her into a hidden room filled with evidence of corruption that reached to the highest levels of Federation government, Thela realized she wasn't just questioning her mission anymore. She was questioning everything. We call it the archive, Nathaniel said as they entered a small chamber hidden behind a false wall in his living quarters. The room was lined with data servers and holographic displays, all humming with activity. In the center stood a round table projecting a three-dimensional map of Federation space, with dozens of worlds highlighted in red. Every red marker represents a world where Federation intervention has resulted in ecological collapse, cultural genocide, or resource depletion, Nathaniel explained, his voice tight with controlled anger. Thela approached the hologram, her training giving way to horrified fascination. She recognized some of the worlds, cases studied at the Academy as successful integrations. This can't be right, she whispered. Meridian 7 was celebrated as a model of peaceful development. Nathaniel touched a control panel, and the hologram zoomed in on a green and blue world. This was Meridian 7 before Federation assistance. Another touch, and the image shifted to show barren plains and massive industrial complexes. This is Meridian 7 now. Population reduced by 70%, native flora extinct, water table contaminated with industrial runoff. The evidence was overwhelming, document after document, testimony after testimony. Federation directives explicitly outlining strategies to destabilize governments, manufacture crises, and extract resources while worlds were vulnerable. And worse, evidence of her own people's complicity. The Zeridian High Council had been well compensated for their silence. "How did you get all this?" she asked, sinking into a chair as her legs weakened. "I was good at my job," Nathaniel replied with a sad smile. "Cultural attaches have access to restricted information. We need to understand a world's vulnerabilities to help them advance." His voice turned bitter on the last word. "When I realized what we were really doing, I started collecting evidence, making copies, building this archive." A small chime from her wrist device broke the heavy silence. "Federation cruiser landing in 15 minutes, the automated alert announced." Nathaniel's expression grew grave. "We need to move the children to the emergency shelter." "We," Thela repeated, still overwhelmed by revelations that shattered her worldview. "Yes, we," he said firmly. "Unless you're planning to arrest me after all this." Thela looked down at her stun baton, then back at the evidence surrounding her. Her training battled with her instincts, her duty with her emerging understanding of right and wrong. "I need to verify this independently," she said finally. "There's no time." Nathaniel stepped closer, taking her hands in his. The contact sent an unexpected warmth through her, despite the gravity of the situation. "Thela, those children trust me. I need to get them to safety. I'm not asking you to betray the Federation. I'm asking you to help protect innocent lives while you figure things out." His proximity was disarming. Thela could detect his elevated heart rate, smell the subtle pheromones his species unconsciously released under stress. Human biology was surprisingly similar to Zeridian in some ways, a factor Academy training had conveniently omitted. "I'll help with the children," she decided. "After that, I don't know." Relief flooded Nathaniel's face. "Thank you." Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary before he released her hands and moved toward the exit. "The emergency shelter is beneath the hydroponics dome. We need to hurry." They gathered the children quickly, Nathaniel explaining the situation in calm, straightforward terms that wouldn't cause panic. Thela watched with growing admiration as he checked each child's breathing apparatus, distributed emergency rations, and assigned the older ones to help the younger. Pax, the reptilian youth, regarded Thela with suspicion. "Are you really helping Federation?" The question stung with its implicit accusation. "Yes," she replied simply, unsure if it was true but wanting it to be. They moved through a maintenance tunnel connecting the habitat domes to the hydroponics facility. Thela took up the rear, alert for any sign of the approaching Federation forces. Nathaniel led the way, carrying Mila, who had become too frightened to walk. The shelter was well hidden, a reinforced chamber beneath the hydroponics equipment, stocked with supplies and multiple escape routes. Once the children were settled, Nathaniel pulled Thela aside. "They'll find us eventually," he said quietly. "That Federation cruiser has thermal scanning capabilities." "I know," Thela replied. "Standard equipment." He hesitated, then said, "I have a countermeasure system, but it needs to be activated from the main habitat. Someone needs to go back." The implication was clear. Thela squared her shoulders. "I'll go." "They won't fire on a Federation officer without warning." "It's too dangerous." "Your priority is the children," she interrupted. "Mine is." She trailed off, unsure how to finish that sentence. What was her priority now? Not her mission, certainly. Not after what she'd seen. Nathaniel studied her face, then nodded. "The activation sequence is simple. I'll show you." He pulled out a small data pad and began explaining the procedure. They stood close together in the narrow maintenance corridor, heads bent over the glowing display. His fingers brushed hers as he pointed out command sequences, sending that strange warmth through her again. When he finished explaining, neither moved away immediately. In the dim emergency lighting, his eyes seemed darker, more intense. "Why are you really helping us?" he asked softly. Thela's antennae twitched involuntarily. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But something tells me you're right about the Federation, about what they've become." "And you trust that feeling?" "Zeridians evolved as truth seekers," she explained. "Our antennae react to deception, our own or others. It's why there are unofficial quotas limiting how many of us can serve in certain positions." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "That's why your file was flagged for this mission. They needed someone who could be manipulated but wouldn't detect the lies in their orders." "What do you mean, flagged?" Nathaniel's expression turned apologetic. "While you were checking on the children, I accessed your mission brief through your datapad. You were specifically selected as a junior officer with appropriate ideological formation and limited field experience. They set you up to fail, Thela." The revelation should have angered her, but instead, it brought clarity. She had been a tool, nothing more. A distant sound echoed through the tunnels, the unmistakable thud of a Federation dropship landing. "You need to go," Nathaniel urged, but made no move to step away. "I know," she replied, equally motionless. Something unspoken passed between them, recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits caught on opposite sides of an unjust system. Or something more personal, more immediate. Impulsively, Thela reached up and touched his face, her slender violet fingers contrasting against his sun-darkened skin. Nathaniel remained perfectly still, his breath catching slightly. "Be careful," he whispered. Thela nodded, then turned and moved swiftly back through the tunnel, the ghost of that touch lingering on her fingertips. Behind her, securing the shelter entrance, Nathaniel watched her disappear into the shadows, his expression a complex mixture of worry, gratitude, and something neither of them was ready to name.